Morning, y'all. I wanted to hop on and talk about codependency and relationships real quick because this seems to be a popular theme in my experience lately and a popular theme in some of my clients' experience lately. And so let's just flesh this out real quick. So, codependency is basically a relationship or a person who is unable to identify their needs, wants, and desires because they rely on feedback, information, or stimuli from the relationships that they have around them in order to move forward with decision making, with thought processes, with feelings. All of those things are dependent upon the circumstances or the people or the environment around them. Codependency often looks like not being able to make simple decisions that would minimally impact your life or other people's lives because you need to know how other people feel, what they want, the temperature of the room. You have a hard time identifying with yourself. You identify yourself through other people's needs, wants, and desires. Some would call it people pleasing. Um, yeah. So a lot of times when people have lots of codependent behaviors is that they were not taught or allowed to explore the world on their own, meaning that even as an adult or a young person, they were very, I don't like to say the word sheltered because I feel like being sheltered is not necessarily a negative thing. I do feel like there's a level of sheltering that can do harm and cause codependency. But not necessarily that they're sheltered, but that they are not supported positively in exploration, meaning that no one around them took the time to foster their growth in a way that allows them to feel confident or take agency over their lives in various areas. So they developed codependency in their parenting, which is cool up to a certain age. And so then that further fosters their relationships, their friendships, and their intimate partnerships. It informs their relationships and their intimate partnerships, right? Because they were not nurtured in their home environment to figure out how to create self agency. So, a lot of times, this leads to low self esteem, it leads to anxiety, stressful self identity, the inability to feel confident in decisions that you make. And so a lot of times these people often are very, what do you call that? Accommodating, right? So they're accommodating and they create spaces where they feel needed or necessary. And in return, are looking for that same reciprocal energy. Sometimes these people will say, oh, I felt used or I didn't feel valued because they don't have strong boundaries, because no one taught them boundaries, and that they are constantly entering spaces based on what they can provide, not who they are, right? So entering a space based on what you can do, like what you can do for someone, versus entering a space on character and building continued character in the relationship often creates codependent spaces. So, what I'm finding, because I am a was formerly hyper independent, right? Because I grew up in a home where I had to figure out everything for myself. I didn't have people who did things for me, so I wasn't allowed to become codependent. Hyper independent, meaning that if it was something for school, I had to figure it out. My mom did not do that. She did not fill out commission slips. She did not, find me when I graduated from elementary. I had to find my own outfit. I had to get my own hair done. I had to figure all those things out for myself. So a lot of times people who are codependent will be attracted to hyper independent people because they are inspired by that ideal that someone is a go-getter, a self-starter, right? And a lot of times people who are hyper independent will be attracted to codependent people because it'll feel good when we have someone doing things for you that no one has ever done before, or so it's a mutually receptive experience until it isn't, right? So both of these people are learning is to not overstep boundaries. The codependent person is learning to instill boundaries so they don't feel used, and the hyper independent person is learning to relax some of their boundaries so they don't feel overwhelmed by being needed, right? You know what I'm saying? Like they get the feeling of being needed. They understand that being needed is a part of reciprocal relationships, and they're not annoyed by being needed because they weren't taught what it looks like to not just give, but to be integral part of experiences, right? Because they've done a lot of their experiences on their own, and so they're not very good at creating experiences where other people feel included, right? And when you have that dynamic, the hyper independent and the codependent often feels left out. They feel like they're being ignored. They feel like they're being used again. That word comes up a lot. They feel like they're not getting what they want out of the relationship. And they feel like their needs aren't being met. That's the main thing. They're constantly communicating, my needs are not being met here. When in reality, right, half of it is that they're not meeting their own needs, because as a codependent, they're trying to meet the other partner's needs and expecting the other partner to meet their needs in return, instead of meeting their needs and then giving what they have in access to the relationship. Excess meaning that you have something left over, right? And the hyper independent person is meeting all their own needs because that's what they're used to doing. They're going to meet their own needs. And then they're feeling from meeting their own needs and feeling like, why do I have to give to anybody else, right? So those two things are happening at the same time. So it can leave both people feeling drained, overwhelmed, annoyed, and not excited about the relationship, right? So this is how healthy boundaries can help both of those people. Because as a former hyper independent who usually does everything on my own, I do attract a lot of codependent people. And so since my boundaries are so firm, like I'm very clear about what I'm willing to give to a space and what I'm not willing to give to the space, I'm very open about that up front, right? And then we can discuss any discrepancies. So like if you're the type of person who needs to talk to your partner every day about your day, but as a hyper independent, that is not a reality for me. I do not need to share my day with people. I do not need to explain what happened. I do not need that type of interaction. I do not desire it, nor do I need it. However, if I'm in a relationship with a person who is moving through codependency or healing from codependency, I recognize that they need that, right? So I allot time in my space for them. And when that time is done, I am honest about that. I'm authentic. This is my boundary. You know, you might not be done. You might need more time from me. I don't have it. I don't have the space for it right now. We can come at this again later this week. Because I don't need this amount of interaction in order to feel connected to people. I don't desire it, right? And I think sometimes it can come off a little rough to people who are moving through codependency because they are still searching to figure out what their balance is, and their value is in connecting and creating symbiotic spaces with people where they feel like they're receiving as much as they're giving. And I think that the biggest thing that I'm finding with the people around me who are codependent is allowing them to have their breakdowns around their codependency and then having a conversation with them and walking with them through that breakdown. Like, you know, I see, you know, because I see it, you know what I mean? I see what you're struggling with because it's not my struggle, right? And this is how this works for me at times, and this is how this doesn't work for me at times. And it's not going to be a perfect space. It's not going to ever be a perfect space. And I think that's what most people are searching for when they're in these two extremes, right? Like a hyper independent person and a codependent person are looking for this balance where the person is going to, the hyper independent is looking for where the codependent person is going to finally get that they have to learn how to do a lot of life on their own and then, you know, allow people who love them and want to share the other parts of their life with them to show up. And then the codependent is looking for the hyper independent person to eventually become more people pleasing or more codependent, more invested in having experiences where they are merging or constantly engaging with each other. And those things are not impossible. But I do think that expecting your partner to move from one extreme to the other extreme is extreme. We're going to meet somewhere in the middle. and I think that as I experience these experiences with friends, loved ones, that as I continue to firm up my boundaries around, you know, who I am and what I want in my space, and I continue to lax some boundaries because I know that my boundaries are really firm. Like I know that they're super tight, right? Because that's what hyper independency has taught me. My hyper independence has taught me to have really firm boundaries so that I can manage my space and manage my life in a way that benefits me and suits me, right? So, bugs. So, constantly asking yourself as a hyper independent, am I refusing to give because I don't have it? Or am I refusing to give because it's uncomfortable to give? It's uncomfortable to be vulnerable with people. It's just uncomfortable to be seen in a certain kind of a way, right? I'm constantly asking myself this, like, you know, when my boundaries are so tight. And then as a codependent person, I believe the question that needs to be asked is, am I wanting to share this experience because I feel lonely, because I don't feel validated, I don't feel seen? Is this important to me because of a lack conversation that I have going on? Or do I genuinely want to share this experience because I believe that this experience will grow our connection? Every experience is not a connection grower. You don't have to. I think that one of the things that relationships have proven to me is that you do not have to share everything with the person that you're with, like every minute detail. It can become overwhelming. There has to be something that you have for yourself. There has to be a personal space. There has to be, because that's how you maintain managing and taking care of yourself in the relationship. A lot of times, people, we give up so much of our power in relationships because we're codependent, because we expect that that relationship is going to fulfill all of the needs that we have, but it's just impossible. It's just not real. Even just think about how you go to work, and you might love your job, but it doesn't fulfill every career goal that you have. It doesn't fulfill every professional ideal that you have. Why? Because it's not meant to. It's meant to help you provide for your family and take care of yourself and to fulfill some sense of knowing about yourself. But then that's why we have hobbies. That's why we have things outside of work that we do, because those things fill in the gaps for the lack that exists in that experience. And the same thing with interpersonal relationships. I'm not going to get everything from one friendship. I'm not going to get everything from a romantic partner. And I don't expect that. So that's why I have 9,000 other things that I put my energy into that pour back into me. That's why I do yoga. That's why I crochet. That's why I write. It's why I skate. These things help me create the space for intimacy for myself, because that is important. It's important to have intimacy with self. If every intimate part of you is poured into another relationship, what are you learning about yourself? You're getting basically a reflection of the relationship, which is not truly who you are. It's a reflection of who you are in that space, right? When you are doing work by yourself, intimate work by yourself, you're getting a reflection of who you are. You're getting feedback of what you truly like, who you truly want to be, how you like to be entertained, how you like to be spoken to, how you like to be experienced, right? When you're getting the feedback from the relationship, it's telling you what that person also is interested in. It's not a clear filter. And that's why the other thing that codependents usually have, that I witness codependents having a hard time experiencing, is feedback, because their feedback, the way they view feedback is through relationship. They need relationship to view feedback. And teaching a codependent how to move that mirror away from the relationship and onto self, for me, has been a very difficult experience. I have all the people who I have codependent relationships with, we often come to that all the people who are codependent around me and are in relationship with me, as I will say, there's always a point where we come to where there's a conversation where we're having where they don't quite understand the independence that I require. And it's hurtful for them because they are taking the independence that I require as a sign that they're not loved, they're not wanted. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I require a certain amount of intimacy and self time that does not include other people. And, sometimes no matter how much I let in someone who has codependent, who is healing through codependency, they will latch on to the smallest things and begin to try to keep creating those scenarios over and over again so that they can feel comfortable. And sometimes I indulge because I love people and I want them to feel well. And then other times I don't indulge because it's not my job. It's not my job to make sure, to ensure that people feel good about themselves. That is an inside job. And that's where we bump heads when they realize that I'm not going to always reassure them in that way because it's just not realistic. No one is doing that for you. You do that for yourself. I just wanted to hop on and share this because it's just such an interesting conversation to watch. Some people will say, oh, they have, when it's codependent, independent conversation, they'll say they have avoidant attachment styles or they have anxious attachment styles. In reality, those all things can be true, but the reality is that somewhere in your childhood, you didn't feel safe as a kid for both of those styles, avoidant or anxious. You didn't feel safe around the people who were nurturing you or were supposed to nurture you. And so you developed anxiousness as a way to track whether or not you're feeling good, or avoidance as a way to track whether or not this was a good space. Or the ideal is to be secure in your own self and secure in any attachment that you make. And as a former hyper independent, it's not always going to be that easy. You're not always going to be feeling secure. However, you can ask yourself, why am I not feeling secure? Why do I feel the need to tap into my hyper independence in this instance? Am I feeling not supported? Am I feeling unloved? Am I feeling abandoned? Because those are the things that create hyper independence, right? And those are the same things that create codependency, but it's in a different way. It's feeling anxious because people don't trust you to create what you want to create for yourself. It's feeling abandoned because people are speaking about you as if you're not there, right? But they're taking care of you, but they're disregarding you. That's the kind of abandonment that happens, right? And they come from the same place. And that's why I think that these relationships often form and are good spaces to heal. It's just that one has to be aware of their situation and be able to have these conversations. Another thing is that I find for this type of connection is that because of a hyper independence, I rely on logic a lot. I am not a very feeling based person. I do not allow my feelings to lead my experiences. In attachments with codependent people, they often are very feeling based. They ignore logic a lot because their feelings matter more to them because those are their triggers, right? They feel left out. They feel excluded. They don't feel loved, right? And so it's a very tricky conversation to have, right? So I'm often reassuring you are loved, you are valued, and I see you from a hyper independent space or healing from a hyper independent space. And I need this space for me. You are not welcome in this space at this time. That does not mean that I don't see, value, or love you. It means that I need time to myself. And it's very funny because you will have to come to that corner many, many times in the relationship. As I go through this, I experience this less and less with people who me healing going on. Our relationships usually don't last long because they're going to see me as a sort of villain in their story. They're going to see me as the person who tried to harm them or hurt them. And I'm okay with that because I know that that's not real for me. It is real for them though. So I accept that. I accept that this is their reality. I accept that this is what they're experiencing. But I don't accept it that for me, right? I don't punish myself for that because I cannot control how people view, experience me. And I do not wish to. So I hope this helps anybody who is navigating relationships and have noticed that they have either codependent, hyper independent, anxious, avoidant attachment styles and need to firm up your boundaries. The one thing that helped me firm up my boundaries in spaces is not just being clear about what I want, but also being authentic about what I can do, what I'm willing to do. And being clear that even in that, like some of my willingness is not conducive to maintaining a relationship, right? I can honestly say that. Like some of the things that I don't want to do might not be good for people who want certain types of relationships. And they get to choose to disengage with me at any time they want. I am not going to manipulate or, manipulate the situation into a space where the person feels like they need to be in contact with me. So I hope this helps. Just a reminder, your boundaries should be authentic to the space that you want to create for yourself. Just ask yourself, what do I like? Why do I like this? What do I need? Why do I need this? What do I want? Why do I want this? How does this look in relationship? How does this look in relationship with myself, outside of other people? How does this experience feel, right? How does this feel? A lot of the one of the big things that I don't enjoy about a codependent, hyper independent connection is the feeling of people tugging at me. As a hyper independent, someone who's healing from hyper independency, people tugging at me triggers me so bad. And I like emotionally tugging at me, and I have to often remind people that, like, hey, I get that you have a desire, a need, or a want, but, not but, because but negates, and when you approach your needs, desires, or wants with me in this way, it does not lead to me wanting to be a part of your experience. Okay, so work on the emotional manipulation, lessening that, and learning to speak from a space of clarity, asking for what you really want, what you really need, what you really desire, and not trying to start arguments or get emotional with me because those things do not work. And I will be seen, you will see me as a sort of enemy or someone who is keeping you from your happiness. And I don't desire to be that person, but I also don't desire to be manipulated in any way. So I hope this helps people who are navigating these spaces. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.